Hey everyone, this is Grenier. In today's Market Minute, I'm going to talk about the 3 types of contracts in purchasing real estate. Exciting. So the 3 basic types of contracts that are very common today in investment real estate. There is the as-is contract, the regular contract to purchase real estate, and an assignment contract. Starting off first with an as-is contract. An as-is contract is a 12-page, huge, fine print legal jargon mess that is basically exactly as it sounds. It's an as-is contract, meaning you agreed to purchase the property from whoever the seller is for whatever the negotiated price is in an as-is condition. Now the buyer obviously has the right to do their inspections and to see the exact condition of the property and all that good stuff. However, depending on who the seller is, it really isn't going to make a dramatic difference just because whatever is wrong with the property or whatever is found in an inspection report, you agreed to purchase it as is. Sometimes the seller will compromise and agree to do a certain amount of repairs to the property. However, they're under no legal responsibility to do so. That does put a line of protection between both the buyer and the seller. If things come up in the inspection report and the buyer doesn't want to purchase the property, they can walk away from it in their inspection period. However, the reverse is also true. If the buyer says, I really want the property, however, you have to do $5,000 worth of repairs, the seller can then say, no, you cancel the contract and everybody goes in their own direction. The second type of contract is your standard contract for purchase. Now this is a little bit more common when you use a mortgage, and it's especially more common when it comes to owner-occupant property. Now this contract is 13 pages, it's 1 extra page than the as-is contract, and basically what that extra jargon that is in there is the protection for the buyer that is actually withheld inside the contract. This basically states that there's a certain amount of money that the seller can be responsible for paying for repairs of the property after the inspection is completed. So if there's like termite damage or the air conditioner isn't working or the roof is leaking or 1,000 other little things that can be brought up in an inspection report, there's actually a clause in the contract that states the seller is responsible for bringing it up to par per the contract and per the buyer's standards. And a lot of the times it's actually to the mortgage company standards. Mortgage companies these days, I've just personally had this myself, they won't lend on a property unless it's at a certain condition. Because obviously if there's things wrong with the property and there could be a lot of expenses in the near future, the buyer is going to have to be responsible for paying for them. In which case, obviously if they're paying for repairs on the property, they might not be paying for the mortgage. So obviously the bank wants to protect their investment and the buyer obviously wants to purchase a nice house. And finally, an assignment contract is basically when somebody purchases a property, they check that little box that's on page 3, I believe, of the as-is contract that allows them to assign it to another buyer. Basically, that means if I were to buy a property for $100,000, I could then assign it to another buyer, even though I don't necessarily own it yet, and say, I'm going to charge you $105,000. And that is what's called an assignment fee. So the third person buying the property is still technically buying it for $100,000, but they're then paying me a $5,000 assignment fee. You're essentially selling the contract to a third party. This is not as common as it used to be a few years ago, just because a lot of sellers don't want to go through that process. However, if you do get lucky enough to be able to assign a contract, it's a great way to kind of reduce your liability and offer a good investment property, especially if you get a good deal, to a client, to another investor, to a friend or something like that. And so realistically, an assignment contract removes all liability from the person originally buying it and it places it on the third-party buyer. And that third-party buyer ends up buying it directly from the seller himself, and it removes you from the contract and you just sit back and collect your assignment fee or your cash and profit. So contracts are definitely not the sexy part of real estate. They're boring, they're annoying, and there's a ton of more stuff that we could go into right now, but that's the 3 general types of contracts that you'll see most common in investment real estate, and it's always good to know. The more you know when it comes to the contracts, the more prepared you're going to be when it comes time to either purchase or sell a property. If you have any other questions on contracts or anything else involved real estate and investments and all that good stuff, please reach out to me at any time. Check out OrlandoPropertyFlips.com for exclusive property releases and market information, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.